Gente, fortune aeternum, mounts. ¡Hostia, mounts! Es literalmente toda la información de las monturas. Let's go. ¿Qué hago yo esperando?
We have direwolves and we have lions.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Que sepas que todos estos vídeos están grabados en la plataformita morada. Si no me sigues en la plataformita morada, no sé qué haces que no me estás siguiendo en la plataformita morada. He dicho ya que hago directos en la plataformita morada. Oh, ¿por qué lo dices tanto, Lenny? Eres muy pesado. Pues sígueme en la plataformita morada y no seré tan pesado, crack. Venga, disfruta del vídeo. ¿Vale?
Fairly eclectic mix.
Caballos, leones y tigres, ¿no? ¿Ha dicho? No, lobos, perdón.
Welcome again, everybody, to Forged in Aeternum, the show that is about all things New World. Today,
Claro que sí.
it is my great pleasure to introduce myself. I'm Dan Henuber. I'm the PO
Hola,
of the
Dan.
social and the team for the feature we're discussing today. And with me is Andy Menchez. He's a lead designer for this wonderful feature.
Senior
and the feature
game designer,
is Mounts, everybody. It's
jefazo.
happening. It's been a while. Some of you out there have expressed interest from time to time in having a faster way to get from point A to point B. And Andy, how long have you been working on this thing?
It's been over a year. I've lost my sense of time while
Más de
working
un
on
año,
it because it's been a wild ride.
Más de un año llevan trabajando en esto, gente.
Time flies when you're
Absolutely.
riding a horse.
And making progress.
Yeah. Well, let's start there, man. Like, I know you you were interested in mounts for a while because of your background, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love like locomotion in games, like second to second, the feeling on a controller.
Pinta que se van a enrollar un pelín, así que voy a darle un busteíto, ¿vale?
I feel like it's an underused. In our industry, you can always make a game actually feel better, like with higher fidelity. And I feel that's what we're aiming to bring to mounts.
Yeah, I loved how you worked on, how many racing games did you work on back in the day?
Oh, tons. At least 5 as a physics designer, as like a handling designer.
Yeah.
So I was pleased to bring like some of those tricks and techniques to mounts.
Yeah, so
¿Esto qué ha
when
dicho yo?
mounts
Juegos de
first started
carreras,
up
ha
about,
dicho.
I guess, a little under a year ago, I know you dove in and just kind of started like, prototype things with the team. Like, what was that like?
Yes, that was the most awesome bit, I think. That we had like a blank slate. We did have one like pink untextured horse that Kevin Christensen had made previously. So I feel like that was, so we didn't even have to set that up, but we did get to set up like a whole bunch of tuning parameters on a blank board and then just start experimenting without any pressure at that point, without any pressure of our deadline, which is also really nice. Plus I got to work with a bunch of our new mount coders who are like, they're such a good feature team.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
we ended
Totally
up like
agree.
divine intervention, like with such a cool and hard-working group of coders. Like it's been an absolute joy.
It really has, and anybody from the Mounts team that's watching right now that couldn't be with us.
Un
I mean,
equipo de
thanks,
programadores,
you all
dice.
did amazing work on this thing. It was a real joy to work on. You're not lying about the pink horse. I remember that because when it's like it was an untextured
El
horse
caballo
model,
que se
and, like,
filtró es eso, ¿eh?
just so happens that our placeholder texture is pink.
Yeah.
So it was like it was pretty magical.
Esa
Somewhat
línea de
iconic,
código
maybe
que se
like two
filtró
shapes with it on.
era ese caballo, están hablando.
So we've got a whole feature for mounts. There's so many things to talk about. It's a pretty big feature. Like we've talked about often, it's really more like 10 features in one. So
Absolutely.
I guess without giving away any like spoilers for the story and stuff, but like what's kind of the player experience going to be in the expansion?
I feel like the player experience is going to change a lot. With previously, you could either fast travel, which is very instantaneous, or you could walk, which I don't know. I don't find it grindy, but I've heard the world's very big, so it can take longer than you might think. I feel this is like the perfect intermediary point whereby you get to see all the scenery of Aeternum, like the game world looks gorgeous, and yet you get to do it at just that little bit more
que tiene el
speed.
caballo, ¿eh?
Plus, also, I think the player experience changes because you have,
Caballo
more agency, like
rechoncho,
you
eh.
have the dash mechanic, so you can suddenly give a burst of
Y un
speed
montón
based on
de
your mount stamina.
monturas
and it kind of
distintas,
feels
por lo que
good.
estoy
Like, you
viendo,
have
¿eh?
the
Sobre
stream
todo
effects,
armaduras,
the
skins
fourth
para el
transition.
caballo, estoy viendo un
Yeah,
montón.
I just feel like it feels intuitive and cool. Like, I like playing it anyway. I think our fans will.
Yeah, there's I know you're kind of telling me like all the kind of like little tricks that we can do to make it really feel like
Yeah.
super speed.
Yeah,
It's all there.
absolutely.
It feels really good.
Yeah.
Speaking of speed, like so what's going to be the deal with speed? How's that going to work?
Okay, so we thought about having speed as a characteristic of the mount, slow horse, fast horse, old mule, like Black Beauty type deal. But actually, it's kind of cooler if it's a property of the player character itself, and it fits really nicely into trade skill. It means that means that you untie what you want your mount to look like with how you want it to behave. So now you can kind of do both at the same time. So we're not saying like always ride this certain horse with a certain appearance because it's fastest. And that would lead us into like a world where everybody's riding the same thing, which is kind of boring. So now we've like ring-fenced the visuals. And if you want to you want your horse to be faster, then you simply earn riding trade skill XP, and it will make you faster eventually when you reach certain trade skill thresholds. I feel like that's intuitive too. It's intuitive for our game.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you earn this riding skill?
Aha, I'm pleased you asked. So there's
Vamos, que los caballos, o sea, las monturas no van a ser iguales para todos. En plan, tú la configuras como quieras, básicamente.
The core way of earning riding XP is by completing our mount quests.
Mount quests, very interesting.
Yep. So we wanted to do something a little bit different from the regular quests because it's mounts. Like it should be more based upon travel, maybe less upon combat, for example. So we have added mount. Call them mount races, maybe they're mount time trials would be a fairer thing to call them. So get to A to B within a certain time. Some of them are tours, whereby you have to go quite a distance and just get to one checkpoint on the other edge of the map. And that's kind of much more about navigating. And then the other ones are called rallies. And they're like, you see the checkpoint ahead of you, you see the timer ticking down, you're going to try and get there like as quick as possible, you get into the red and you're like, you know, that old kind of racing game arcade vibe whereby you cross just as the thing hits zero.
Como un minijuego, dicen.
Your time extended, you can get to the next one.
Que mola eso.
It's kind of a bit different from what we've got on New World. Like it's really nice to be putting something out there that's like a completely new experience rather than an extension of what we already have.
Yeah, we've played them a few times now, obviously, and yeah, like it's hard not to have a smile on your face when you first do one. And props to the quest team here for helping us out with these. Ben Barker especially worked really hard, but he wasn't the only one. So yeah, I mean things are really coming together on it. And so in terms of not just doing the mount quest, but in getting from point A to point B, are there any other kind of ways to progress or customize how you ride?
Yes, absolutely. So we have mount buff items, which they're kind of like trinkets, aren't they? They're stat only, but they will change the way you ride a mount. We have one slot dedicated to your mount stamina, which is i.e. your dash, the amount of dash.
Hay ítems legendarios que le cambian la stat al caballo.
Mount buff items that change your
¿Y esos ítems cómo se conseguirán?
You can increase your recharge rate, or you can increase your capacity,
or you
can increase your power of your stamina, of your dash, either on road or off road.
Nice. And how many slots do you have for these things?
You have 2 slots, and then the other slot's kind of more of a nod to mounted combat, if you think that's fair to say. Like it will give you a status effect. Predominantly, there's the stamina slot, and then the slot for all the other buff items, and all the other buff items for the most part are where you are given a status effect when the AI
combate en montura,
which is actually really handy.
It is. Yep. I love the healing one.
Yep.
Hecho es un guiño al combate montado.
It takes a disappointing moment and turns it into a cool moment.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Pero no se puede, ¿no?
With mounts, we have hippos, right?
Hippos. I hope we will be one day.
I'm sorry, I'm being told we don't have hippos yet. Well, what do we have, Andy?
We have horses, we have dire wolves, and we have lions.
Lo de los hipopótamos.
It's a fairly eclectic mix. Maybe we'll go further in the future, you can say.
And without spoiling it, the reasons for these different animal types are kind of like tied into the lore around the expansion and in cool ways that everybody will find out. I mean, what's your favorite?
I'm kind of a traditionalist. I do like the horse. I feel like because it was our default, because we had that old pink horse, like I just feel an attachment to it.
Yeah, you got to keep it going, for sure.
It's true.
I'm with you. I think just nothing beats that fantasy of your horse taking you across the land, but the wolf and lion are way cooler than I thought they'd be.
Yeah, me too.
They're done.
There's something about a giant wolf that just reminds me a little bit.
Pero creo que tendré un lobo.
For sure, yeah. I'd say, what's your favorite? Not your favorite. What excites you most about the future now that things are wrapping up?
I have 2 answers, like a small thing and a big thing. The big thing is the mount quests, because it's just fun to race. It's fun to get that mechanic into New World, and it feels good. But the smaller thing, which kind of surprised me, is the fact that we changed the parameters. So you're much faster on a mount on road than you are off road. And like, that was your idea, if I recall correctly. And it was kind of a game changer, because it really did change. It changed the way you think about traveling on a mount, and it made you make all these split-second decisions. Like I used to do on Mario Kart on SNES, like you decide whether if you cut a corner, even though you're going to lose the speed for not being on road, are you going to be net quicker? And like you can kind of do all those calculations on the fly. And I think it made a difference. Otherwise, if you're at the same speed, you'd just be beelining to your destination, which might be cool. But I like this. Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that.
I mean, obviously, as everybody knows, the player already runs a little faster on roads. But I mean, what did the speed delta end up being?
It was
for the horse. I mean, for the mount.
Much bigger than the player. By a factor of maybe 5 or something, maybe 6. I can't think of the numbers at the top of my head.
5 veces más rápido que un
did,
personaje.
Stretch out. We took the rule that we had for the player and just amped that up.
Yeah, it's some of the time trials are you know, like go like clear this vast distance of the world, and you kind of have
loco.
to, you know, use your knowledge of aeternum to plot a course, and the way the roads are in the world are, you know, they're so interesting. With this kind of speed on roads, you really feel it, like kind of it's a whole new way to play the game.
It absolutely is.
Muy
Roads
guapo,
kind of meander, so you're often like cornering in ways you don't expect, or kind of my favorite bit of the quest line is when you get I like doing the same race for a second time at a harder speed limit, at a harder time limit, because the first time you do it, I find like you're just getting your bearings on it and you're seeing if you can do it like that. But the first time and the second time, I feel you're more like.
Lo malo es que son carreras individuales.
Yeah, I always feel that's a more satisfying experience.
Yeah, and I think hopefully our intent was to find a good balance where it's fun to play these things. It doesn't feel grindy. Doesn't feel like it takes forever. Yeah. And,
¿Y dentro de ciudad se puede ir con la montura o no?
It's probably the fastest trade skill
Yo creo que no se podrá.
that we've ever made, where you're going to be able to get to max pretty quick.
Yeah, I think so. I reckon if you're good at it, you'll be able to do it in about.
Para que no pete la ciudad. Yo creo que no dejarán estar dentro de ciudad con montura.
I mean, there's a lot of factors, and everybody's going to play it differently. And then anybody who doesn't feel like doing the races, that's what the food is for.
Yep. Yeah.
We were talking earlier about those gear, the pieces of gear that you can equip. Did we cover them all, or were there more?
No, there are more. So we only talked about the visual, the non-visual, but we also have visual-only items. There are our mount attachment items. So we predominantly use shields, but you can also skin them with cool MTX, kind of trade skill related skins. Like my favorite is the basket fish.
Son skin.
That's
Really your favorite?
It's my favorite.
Interesting.
Sure.
Okay.
It's kind of like an eclectic mix. I can live my fantasies of being a fisherman on my horse, taking in my haul of salmon.
For sure. I mean, it's so detailed. I have trouble with it because I can almost smell the olfactory aspect to it.
Yeah. Maybe we need some animated flies just flying around the top.
That's a really good idea. We're gonna do that as soon as we get off camera.
Excellent.
And then we also have like flags, and we're gonna. This is an area where we're definitely gonna expand in the future. But the idea being that there's some of these things that are like super exclusive.
Sería guay, la verdad.
Like nothing. It's very high visibility, right? Because the mount is so huge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to show off. Particularly the one that gets a few comments is the anvil. Like the idea that you stick an anvil to the slot onto the back left and the back right of your mount, and it's mount agnostic, so it will transfer from the horse to the wolf to the lion. But like just putting an anvil on the thigh of your mount, I don't know, like it's kind of like a mount workout.
It's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Makes them buff.
Man, yeah, and I think that kind of one of the things you'll be able to earn these things from are PvP activities, which could maybe segue us into talking about. So, like, what are the ways in which we've tried to, we obviously we don't want mounts to unbalance the game in any way. Right. So, what are some of the ways that we've tried to combat that, both in PvE and PvP? Well,
we've certainly done our due diligence on how much we think it affects PvP.
Yeah, we went through a few iterations, huh?
Yeah, and we have changed the rules as to whether you can be mounted when you're doing a PvP quest or whether you can be mounted in certain game modes. And I feel like, I don't know if you agree, I feel like we've tried to be as unrestrictive as possible without ruining anybody's game experience, because we want to kind of be a laid-back game and let players empower players, let them do and play the way they want.
Yeah, that line between PvE and PvP was helpful, I think.
Yes.
Because like the PvE side of it, our intent is if you're playing the game normally, you can't just use the mount to like cheese through all the content. Yeah. So I think we hit on a pretty good balance of when enemies will dismount you, based on level differentials and player health, like you put in, and all the other things. Yeah. But PvP, it's still just any hit from another player dismounts you.
And I think that's the right thing. Like it's easy to be a bit more evasive on a mount. Yeah. And when you're playing, when you're against AI, that's kind of fine. That's kind of fun. You can escape if you want. You can fight if you want. But in PvP, it would be annoying if you're a PvP player and you hit a mounted player and they didn't instantly dismount. Yeah. And hey, I think it's kind of fun. Like it's a fun aim now. You get your bow and arrow. See if you can shoot someone off their horse.
It's very very interesting. I think it changes the game in cool, fun ways. All of our playtests so far have been wild cackles of laughter. So, but yeah, it's definitely been one of our big focuses, and I think it's one of the things we'll be looking at really close once the feature's live. Did you have anything else you wanted to go over before we wrap?
There is the more elaborate mounts that you can get from the MTX store that we didn't talk about. So, and the dying. So the mounts don't die. Like they're immortal, just like the player character. It's aeternum after all. Right. But actually dying, the colors on your mounts. If your mount is armored, and you can get the armored mounts from the MTX store, you will also be able to find mount dyes, and you can do some really cool stuff to the armored mounts.
¿Veis de lo que hablo? ¿Veis cómo se hacen las cosas bien? ¿Veis cómo aquí Amazon está haciendo las cosas bien? Y dice desde el primer momento, vais a poder comprar monturas en la tienda. Tacatá. ¿vale? Y lo dicen y no pasa nada y me parece correcto, me parece perfecto, porque al fin y al cabo son skins, ¿vale? Entonces ya está, vais a poder comprar monturas y no pasa nada. ¿Por qué? Porque las stats no influyen en absolutamente nada. Y ya está, me parece perfecto, bien hecho, tío, bien hecho, desde el primer momento diciendo las cosas como son, y ya está, perfecto, tío.
You can make kind of look a bit like Captain America, which particularly is fantastic as a Brit.
If Captain America were a horse.
If he were a horse.
There's a lot of possibilities for self-expression.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that we had like an armored style, and when the art would come in, you'd see it first on the horse, and you'd be like, well, how is that going to be adapted to, what will that look like on a lion or on a wolf, and how will like the size of the armor slightly have to change? And then like the art guys just nail it.
They've been having a lot of fun concepting these, you can tell.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up for us. If you like the show and you want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe. Tells us that you
Gracias. A ver,
watching.
en the next funcionamiento aeternum, a ver, ¿qué vamos a tener?
Today we're going to be talking about the new weapon coming out on the expansion, the flail.
Vale, o sea, el lunes probablemente tengamos funcionamiento aeternum de la maza. Cuidado. Se viene.